sighed and cried because of the abominations that were being committed among his people. And when the destruction of Jerusalem came by Nebuchadnezzar, we find that this faithful remnant that was sealed on their foreheads, according to Ezekiel chapter 9, was spared from the destruction. When the adulterous wife was destroyed, God's faithful people who sighed and cried because of the abominations that God's own people were committing, they were spared. Now, it's not like God had not warned Israel about the dangers that she was going to face when she entered the promised land. In Leviticus chapter 18 and verses 26 to 30, we find God's warning to Israel. Notice what it says there. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, either any of your own nation or any stranger who dwells among you. For all these abominations the men of the land have done, who were before you, and thus the land is defiled. Lest the land vomit you out also when you defile it, as it vomited out the nations that were before you. You know, you get the imagery that even the land was nauseated by the abominations that were being committed by these nations. Verse 29, for whoever commits any of these abominations, the persons who commit them shall be cut off from among their people. Therefore you shall keep my ordinance, so that you do not commit any of these abominable customs which were committed before you, and that you do not defile yourselves by them. I am the Lord your God. Time and again in this passage, God warns Israel not to partake in the abominations of the nations of Canaan where they were going to enter. Notice 2 Chronicles 36 and verse 14, and this is only a sampling of texts. All throughout the Pentateuch, or the 5 books of Moses, the first 5 books of Moses, we find God warning Israel about not becoming defiled with the practices and doctrines which are called the abominations of the nations. 2 Chronicles 36 and verse 14. Moreover, all the leaders of the priests, notice it started with the priesthood, all the leaders of the priests and the people transgressed more and more according to all the abominations of the nations, and defiled the house of the Lord which he had consecrated in Jerusalem. In other words, time and again, God says that Israel, in spite of the fact that he had warned them not to become defiled with the abominations of the nations, they became defiled with the practices, with the teachings of these pagan nations. Now, as we noticed in our study last time, the Christian church has repeated the history of ancient Israel. The Apostle Paul, as we noticed in our last lecture, said that he had betrothed the Corinthians, or the church, to Christ as to Christ as a virgin. In other words, the church in its original state, as we find in the book of Acts, was a pure church. It was the bride of Jesus Christ.